Hello and welcome back. I decided to replicate the TIBI Fusion experiment that I'd seen on the Martin Fleisch Memorial Project. I thought the Ultra was pretty cheap and easy, but this one's even simpler and cheaper. Basically we have a capacitor, 2 sheets of aluminium foil separated by a thin layer of de-ionized water, and I'm just running through a couple of the ones that I tried here, tried a few different things to make it work. And what I learned along the way is that it's important not to have the aluminium touching, otherwise you just get a dead short situation, and you can't have too thick a layer of water, otherwise I believe it just acts as a little mini electrolyzer and just uses the power to split the water. This one here I had a pretty big boom. It was a little bit of a shock. That was the biggest one I had. When we flip it over we can see some interesting patterns there, some quite large explosions under each of the electrodes of the capacitor. I'm just trying a few different things. Sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. And didn't have any luck with these ones here at the end. Not a bad setup there, a few good sparks, but mostly when it's around the electrodes I think that's more of a short situation. But this is the best one I had, and this is the focus of the video today, was this particular one. So watch this a couple of times. We get a good boom there. And we'll zoom in on it one more time and just see the parts we're going to then look at under the microscope. And we see the sparks are happening away from where the electrodes are, so that tells me it's been a successful discharge and we've got what we want to see. And then the bit we're going to have a look at appears just there, those little dots that have appeared. We've popped them under the microscope and we're going to have a little bit of a look at what they look like. And I really like what we're seeing here. I think we're seeing things very similar to what was seen in the Ultra experiment, where we have the little footprints of the whirlwinds that have happened and consumed a bit of aluminium and water. There's what I think's happening there, just one of those tiny little ball lightning structures in there. And we'll just fast forward through some of the more boring bits there. It's the other section. So this is the shiny side of the foil. So this would have been on the outside. Let's say the top, not the inner water-facing layer. Zoomed in a little bit closer there and you can really see these beautiful little fractal toroidal moment footprints. Some of them seem to be daisy-chained together. It's quite obvious that we're seeing the same thing as the Ultra experiment there. And this is the other section up the top of the foil. When we get up there, here we go. Again, lots of these little footprints, all sort of daisy-chained together, like they're flowing from one to the other. This is the dull side of the foil, so this would have been the bit facing the water. Now, less detail can be seen here under the microscope, and it almost looks like sort of an outward explosion from the water is what I'm thinking might be happening there. It's hard to understand what it is. Less detail to be seen, but interesting. Flip it back over to the shiny side. And again, look, there's just a lot more detail there. But again, that doesn't look like an inward fold on this side. So not really sure which side's punching in and which side's punching out. Again, dull side. I think this was the base layer of foil now we're looking at. The dull side, same sort of patterns we saw before. And shiny side, so this would have been the section facing away from the water. And also saw these little horizontal or linear tracks along the foil too. I don't think these were just defects in the foil from when I started. They look like there's some sort of a track or a linear travelling object. You can see the tracks tracking along there. There's about 3 of them or so that I found on the foil. And I'll flip it over to the dull side and we actually see them a bit better on there. There's another one down here as well. I'll flip it over, and on the dull side you can sort of see a bit more clarity there. They really do look like one of those linear travelling objects that Bob's shown before on his channel. There's a third one down here. And then the underside of those little toroidal moment bubbles that had happened in there. So something to maybe look at in the future when we look a bit further. And here we see, this is what I think is happening. All these little tiny micro ball lightning structures on there. And some of them look like they're daisy chained together, feeding into the other. Which made me think of Bob's recent presentation of this old temple structure, energy structure where the vortex areas fed into one another. And the final thing I want to have a look at here, I did notice after all the fun and games is finished here, we notice a little smoky object rising up. I think I put an arrow on just to highlight where it is. Here we go. So just popping out from about there, we see this little faint smoky object rising up. I'm really curious about what this is, whether it's just some vapor or some smoke, but it looks like a bit of a figure 8 pattern sort of rising up there, and I wonder if it's something else perhaps drifting off after the spark discharge has happened. So thanks for watching. We'll catch you later.